Hi guys, welcome back to N Adders Reptile Advice. Today we're going to go a bit further trying to understand habitat and biome. As with all of these videos, they're designed for novices and people that haven't got a huge amount of experience, and we're just trying to get those synapses firing and get you to understand the animals that you keep. Now, this first diagram we've used previously in our hardiness video, and it helps try and explain the theory of bandwidth between daytime high and nighttime low, and that is the width between the red line and the blue line. The red line being the daytime high, the blue line being nighttime low. The tightest bandwidth can be found at the equatorial regions, where we have to stay within those confines for fear that we might potentially cause illness or problems with our animals. The tropics, the bandwidth is slightly wider, and widest of all is these temperate regions outside of the tropics, where daytime high and nighttime low are most divergent. This is an overview, a generalization. And it's almost that simplified that it potentially is untrue. And the reason for that being that we haven't taken into consideration habitat or biome. And we need to add to this description as a general overview the nuance. That's what we're going to try and discuss today. Just basics, just to go through it so that we understand what we're talking about. There will be areas that buck the trend, shown here at the equator and shown here in the tropical regions, and potentially in the temperate regions too. So let's look at habitat and biome. We've got arid semi-desert, montane elevated regions, plains, prairie and grassland, temperate deciduous forest, subtropical rainforest. We have a tracer line in red, which is our daytime high, and a tracer line in blue, which is our nighttime low. So depending on where an animal is from and the habitat that it lives in, will also affect what its daytime high and nighttime low is. So what we're working from is exposure to coverage, and it's that tracking along as we go how we can discuss how that might affect our daytime high and our nighttime low. So arid semi-desert, next to no cloud cover, exceedingly exposed to the sun's power. There's next to no tree cover. It's just too aggressive as far as environments go, and the plants just won't tolerate it. And even in the very hottest regions, even cacti can't really survive as well because it's just too extreme, and they tend to be more fringe plants than anything else. So you've got them in the succulents, which are more mountain regions. So in that exposed area, we can expect the UV index to be incredibly high for our diurnal lizard keepers. And realistically, the daytime high is so high that many of the snakes are going to estivate, which is the opposite of brumate. They're going to hide away because it's just too warm. They can't cope with the heat. Our diurnal lizards are going to be out and about. They'll bask. They'll shuttle from the sun into the shade. And that's how they're going to top up their energy levels, make sure that they are able to escape and evade predators should they get accosted. So this exposure means that we've got to provide lots and lots of UV light for our lizards. Potentially we need to look at providing UV for some of the snakes that occur there as well. We need to be able to provide a gradient from hot to cool so that they can move away. They must be able to shuttle. Now the difference is at night, we know that these temperatures absolutely plummet. They fall away at night because there is no insulating factors or helping the environment to retain any of that heat, and it literally just disperses into the air. So whilst there is a small amount of heat kept at the surface, this will dissipate relatively quickly, as there is nothing to slow that process of dissipation down. As we move to montane or elevated regions, the exposure is still quite high. So these are rocky outcrops in the mountainous regions. Let's think of the Durango Mountains and the Arizona Mountains and these sorts of regions where we would get our montane king snakes, such as Lampropeltis pyromelana and Lampropeltis mexicana. These guys are halfway up a mountainside, so we can expect with the elevation and the altitude that the temperatures aren't going to be as aggressive down on the desert floor, but we would still expect it to be very bright and the UV index to be quite high. Again, because we're exposed and the tree cover's not brilliant, also we'd expect quite a bit of wind chill factor as well, that our nighttime low is going to stay quite depressed at this point. So again, we're thinking about the way that these animals work, and we can obviously extrapolate this out for, say, bearded leopard geckos and other montane species. They come from the mountainsides of Afghanistan and Pakistan, so we can think about those. Plains, prairie and grassland. Okay, so here we go. So now we're thinking about western hognose, bull snakes, radix garter snakes, the prairie kings, the Great Plains rat snakes. So there's a few bits here, and we're going to be relatively exposed to the sun, but it's good burrowing soil, and this means that we're going to have mammals that we can use the burrows of, and we can move in to our gopher burrows and such like, and they're going to retain some heat. They'll insulate us from the heat of the day, but they'll also insulate us from the cold at the night as well. So it's just not quite as an aggressive an environment. Cloud cover will be occasional, potentially occasional rains and such like as well, because the grasses obviously need to be able to be maintained as well. Temperate deciduous forests, and this is where we're getting into really the main area of, certainly for the snakes that we recommend to novices. So we've got corn snakes, yellow rats, black rats, the Florida king snakes, the Brooks king snakes, all these sorts of things. And what we've got is a relatively stable daytime high following on from our prairie and grassland. But now the nighttime low is not quite as depressed as in the prairie and grassland. Well, why is that? Well, the difference is that now we've got quite a bit of tree cover, which is going to have some insulating properties. It's going to help provide shade during the day to stop the sun from superheating the ground, so the animals can stay active for longer. But also it stops the heat that's trapped and the air that's warm from dissipating immediately at night time, and it helps to hold it in. The cloud cover that's present will also help to retain some of this heat, meaning that our nighttime low isn't as depressed. So we're now really getting to quite covered regions. The most covered of all is subtropical rainforest. So we've got a relatively stable daytime high, and our nighttime low may actually only be 4 or 5 Celsius cooler than it during the day, and that's because of the dense foliage and canopy to the forest and the heavy cloud cover. So it's very muggy, very humid, and that heat is retained and it stays at night, and we're still seeing temperatures of 27, 28 degrees at night, and it really just doesn't cool down that much. So this tends to be more what we would expect from our equatorial regions, but then equally there will be desert regions and semi-arid regions around the equatorial region as well. So also think about, like, I don't know, Death Valley, Nevada, which is just into the temperate zone in North America, but that's arid semi-desert as well. Actually, some of the hottest temperatures ever recorded on Earth were in Death Valley, Nevada. Then you've got the Atacama Desert down in Chile, so that's down in your temperate zone as well. But again, super hot, not rained for 40 years down there. So it's weird the way these things work. And then things like the temperate rainforests, such as for our crested geckos, the Corylopus ciliatus. There's a few different things, and these biomes are what helps to affect daytime high and nighttime low, as well as the consideration of origin along whether it was equatorial, tropical or temperate. We can also look at exposure amount or coverage amount, and then make educated, not necessarily guesses, but we can help ourselves work out how our animals would be most comfortable. And this is relatively basic stuff, and people do it without thinking, without connecting dots. You know, people will say to you with the royal python or ball python, well, you use cypress mulch on the floor. Well, why? Why do you? You know you've been told to do it, but why do you do it? It shouldn't just stop at you've been told to do it, so I'll do it. Why are you being told to do it? Because they probably appreciate a bit of humidity, and that will help them shed their skin. And they're from Ghana and Togo and the Côte d'Ivoire in West African rainforest belt, and the humidity there is going to be pretty good, you know, and otherwise the skin might stick. You know, equally, why would animals be provided with climbing apparatus from the rainforest, such as green tree pythons or emerald tree bugs? Because they're specialist arboreal snakes, and we need to try and lend ourselves to the biome that they come from. And this follows through for everything, and there are rationale and criteria for every species that would be kept in captivity. And it's them using this information and being able to do your research. Just by visiting Google and putting climograph for West Texas, climograph for Florida, climograph for the Ukraine, it will show you daytime high, nighttime low, rain level, probably even daylight hour amounts and all sorts throughout the seasons. So as well as that data that we can get from the climograph, we can also work out where they occur on this bandwidth chart, and then we can work out which biome or habitat they would normally occur from, and then, you know, Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. We've worked out exactly what the animal needs, and we didn't need to read a care sheet. We've just worked it out because this is where they originate from. So it's amazing what can be done just by using common sense and connecting dots. And I would encourage any novice keeper to definitely look at biome and habitat of your animal's origin, as well as the country and region of origin, so that we can get a better picture of how to maintain our animals more accurately and ensure that they're happy throughout their life. I hope you enjoyed that add-on video. We'll be back with more educational videos soon, and we'll see you all again as soon as possible. From Paul and me at Snakes and Adders, peace.